So we're going to move to the next section. You've all heard prompt engineering. I think everybody has heard that term, but ultimately it comes down to what are some of the fundamental principles of writing a good prompt so that you can steer the AI's behavior in the right direction and get the best output from it. So one thing to think about is just like humans, when you are working with humans, if you give them minimum instructions or minimum context, for a job and you leave them to it, chances are they'll come back with something that's going to have a lot of assumptions that they made. And you're going to then send them back and redo something because you're going to provide some more clarification. Similarly, for AI, as intelligent as it is, it's also dumb because it doesn't know you or your context or your intent until you provide it that information. And then from there, you start to harness better output, more contextual, more relevant to the task that you're performing. And as we go through this, you'll see how fundamentally how to think about prompts, but then how to also make this more of a repeatable framework so you don't have to provide the same context every single time. So we'll make that progression. But the whole idea is that when you're talking to a machine, you have to talk to a machine like you would talk to a human in terms of providing the right instructions so that human or teammate on your team can go and get the best output for you in first shot. Let's go through what this looks like. And by the way, these are not the only thing, but these are some characteristics of structuring a good prompt that we have found from our experience and also all our research that tends to get a good quality output from AI. So number one, and a good practice when you're working with AI is always in your prompt, anchor the AI that you're using with some kind of a role or a characteristic. So when I'm working with AI, one of the things I will always instruct is, hey, you are a X, right? It could be you're a marketing specialist, you're a top researcher, you're a top content writer, you're a top project manager, you're a top financial analyst. So I'm steering its persona to think and function and perform the task with that particular mindset. So that's one. The other you could do is provided some kind of a framework or a character. So you can say, hey, if you're doing some kind of a business planning, some kind of strategy planning, and then based on the kind of business you have, you can see what are the top minds in that domain and say, hey, I want you to think, in this case, an example is Steve Jobs. If I was building some kind of out of the box thinking product, right? If I'm thinking something around the business of bit scaling, then I would put Reid Hoffman, for instance, right? If I'm doing something on first principle, I might put Elon Musk or someone, right? So you can first and foremost give it some kind of a role or a character or even a framework so that you're steering its thought process in that frame of mindset. That's number one. The other thing you can do in your prompt is, as a good practice, is to provide it a clear goal. Why are you having it perform this task? So you're giving it a very clear goal on, hey, you are a marketing specialist, that's your role, and your job here is to construct a 3-part email sequence that performs. And here's your goal. Here's what success looks like. That's what this prompt is doing. Ultimately, this should drive more clicks and more conversions. So you're giving it a very clear goal, just like you would to a human content writer on your team. The third thing you're going to provide is a little bit of a context and background. It could be, why am I doing this? Maybe I've seen a decline or I'm seeing more competition in the industry, or this is something I'm doing for the first time because I have this list of, it's a target marketing and I have a huge email list that I've not tapped into. That could be some of your context and background. Context could also be, this is what my business is. I provide these kinds of services, or this is what my role. And as a program manager, I'm trying to construct, this is a program that I'm managing. And as part of that, I have to provide weekly updates. And this is the first update. So some context around the program would be needed, some level setting would be needed, etc., etc. So you get the idea. It's providing some kind of a context on background on the job or the task you're asking AI to perform for you. The fourth best practice is to also guide what the output format could be. Do you want this in a tabular, like in a table, in a matrix format? Do you want this as a bulleted list? Do you want this summarized in maybe a short 3 sentence paragraph? Right? These are some things you have to think about so that you can get the best version of response out of it. If you're building an email sequence, you don't want a one-page email to customers. Nobody is going to use it. You also want a very strong hook at the beginning. It needs to have a clear start, middle, and finish, and some kind of a CTA, as an example, a call to action. The other thing, two things I'll call out that people don't tend to use the most. I think most people are there as far as the context and the role and the output, things like that. If you're doing something that involves more rules, define those rules, set some guardrails, some boundaries, some conditions around your task so that the AI not only knows what to do, but also what not to do. So in this case, for example, it's saying, hey, one of the guardrail is you have to maintain a particular kind of a tone. One of the things when I'm using Gemini, especially because I find it very verbose, is I always say, hey, you have to keep it concise. You have to keep it direct. I'm not looking to preach. I'm looking to inform. Those are some of my guardrails in my instructions. Sometimes, if you're doing something that is very fact based, you can say, hey, don't make up anything. Strictly go with the data that's provided to you. Those are examples of guardrails. And then the other one that I find really helpful is providing what are you going to do with this information next? Are you going to send it an email? Are you going to publish a paper around it? Are you going to post it on LinkedIn? Are you going to post it on Teams, on Slack? Right? Some kind of next intent. Or are you going to take all this information and generate a slide deck out of it? Or a one pager out of it. So also give it that instructions on what do you plan to do with it next. Just like you would tell a human, hey, after you're done performing all of this, I'm going to put it in an email sequencer so that this email can be sent every week, can be dropped every week if I'm doing a marketing campaign. Or hey, after you do this, I'm going to build an executive brief off of this. So these are some things that you have to think about to write a more effective prompt so that you can steer the behavior and the task in the right direction for AI. Because at the end of the day, it's a machine like a human who needs clear guidance. So zero shot or few shot are where you're giving an example of this is what good looks like in your prompt. So when AI gives you back for your specific ask, then it has modeled after that. This is really helpful if you're in marketing, let's say, and you want the output to be in a very specific format and you know what that format looks like. So you provide that as an example. The one that I particularly like a lot is the chain of thought prompt, and you're going to see us use that in a few places as we go through this workshop, which is where you're saying, hey, AI, I have this task for you, and I want you to think about it in these 3 steps. So you're prompting in your prompt, you're saying, this is how I want you to approach this particular task. And this becomes your repeatable prompt. So the next time you have a different variation of that task, it applies that same chain of thought process. So these are just some different techniques beyond what we discussed in terms of the 6-part constructs, good practice constructs that you can explore based on the nature of the task.
Yeah, one homework we would like to give you is just use the prompt that you would have today and use that page that we just walked you through. Make sure that your prompt is 1 page long, minimally, right? And write 2 or 3 paragraphs for each of the role, goal, context, constraints, guardrails. Run the same thing and then see in the same model, same everything. Just open a different window and see what that does. You should see a difference. And share that with the class to say, I ran the same exact thing and this is how I saw. And over time, you will improve it and then see what to do.
Some other prompting techniques, few that I want to call out. The models do have a tendency to prioritize the capitalized text more. So if you want the instructions to pay closer attention to something, one of the ways to do that is through do not do this can be
Highlight
capitalized,
it. Yeah.
for instance, right? That's where I definitely use I know it sounds like you're shouting at it, but I use capitalization. If I'm like very particular, do not do this, do not make any changes until I've approved thing. The other thing is also some of the XML styling. You could also wrap, hey, here's the context in this kind of a box, and all the content around context goes within the context boxes. And then here's our tasks, here's our constraints. The other one I also like to use is a single hashtag versus a double hashtag or a 3 hashtags, which tells it this is my header, this is my sub details, and then nested details. So these are some tricks and techniques, and you'll see that in some of the prompts that we have in this workbook where these techniques have been applied. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through a hands-on exercise together. I have given some sample prompts that you can customize, or you can take a prompt that you already have and tailor it based on that framework that we just went through, which is where define the goal, role, format, context, and guardrails. A trick I would say is go to whatever AI tool you use, whether GPT, Gemini, or Claude. And in that, you can say, hey, here is my prompt, optimize it. You can just ask in your prompt and have AI write a good prompt for you as well. Hopefully, you're all following along on the workbook so you can find this. The goal of this exercise is for each of you to take a prompt from your own arena, or you can pick a sample scenario based on your profile, and then write a more robust prompt.